Podcasting since 2005. This is the King of Podcasts radio network. kingofpodcasts.com.
I've got a bone to pick with some of my fellow podcasters.
The King of Podcasts radio network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast. Here is the King of Podcasts.
Welcome to episode 430 of the Broadcasters Podcast. We're going to talk about podcasters tonight. I got a bone to pick with some of you folks out there. Being the aforementioned King of Podcasts, I feel like podcasting is taking a particular turn. You know, it's a common evolution in television, a common evolution in entertainment, where certain genres of certain programs start going off the deep end. The talk shows that we were very familiar with, let's say in the 70s, going into the 80s, and moving on into the 2000s, they go on to their end of going tabloid, going off the rails, a little more out of bounds, a little more risque, pushing the envelope. Because there's always going to be a particular motion as to where you're going to get there. And tonight we're going to go through where I'm seeing a lot of similarities as to where podcasting is taking a tabloidistic turn. Tabloids, you know, we've had that kind of thing for a long time. But it's the problem where some of my fellow podcast folks out there, brethren, sistren, you're going on a route where if you're going to go wild, if you're going to go ahead and go out there with commentary, opinion, editorial content, be ready for it. Because you're not taking it tongue in cheek. You're not necessarily being fun about it. You're actually taking some of this very seriously. And you're not good at it. Look, I have taken a program of my own that is out of bounds. But even I know that I got to take some of what I read and what I talk about on the program kind of tongue in cheek. I have to be a little satiristic. I got to be a little funny about it. Depraved and Debaucherous is the series. If you haven't heard it, it's on my website, kingofpodcasts.com, part of the King of Podcasts radio network. But even I know, talking about prostitution or OnlyFans or online dating or sugar daddies and all that kind of stuff, yeah, it's salacious. It's out there. It's in the gutter. But there's a way to talk about it. And, you know, in some cases, I do try to give a good message out there. But even I know it's kind of out there. It's not for everybody. But there's a young audience that really enjoys it. But I'm seeing it in certain areas. It comes into what we see content creators having to do to get clicks. And that's the biggest reason why they're doing it. Because everybody's out here trying to make more money off of it because we're starting to hit a peak. And podcasting is hitting a plateau now. LA Times puts out a story about it and talks about the $1 billion growth problem. Now, we're going to go into that in a little bit and so much more. But we have to go ahead and talk about the breaking news this hour, which is the cancellation of ABC's The Bachelorette, this current season right now, because of TMZ breaking open, a tabloid themselves, TMZ breaking open a big story about domestic violence that the particular Bachelorette was part of, was caught on video, and now she's got to pay for it. But first, we got to do a little of this.
Are you getting tired of doing your podcast? Feel like you're spinning wheels and not seeing results? Whether you're just starting out or you're already a brand, you need content that literally stops the scroll. Adding video isn't the answer. It's top-tier professional production that gets results. King of Podcasts Productions handle everything remotely, from editing and dynamic ads to making sure your voice sounds flawless. No awkward pauses, just exceptional content. King of Podcasts Productions. Don't sleep on your potential.
If you would like to hire yours truly, you can do it right now. Go to the website, kingofpodcasts.com. Look for the contact link at the very top of the homepage. I also have services you can also look at right there on the menu, or go down to the bottom of the homepage and look for the contact form for you to go ahead and talk to me about a plethora of services I can provide for you at kingofpodcasts.com. So ABC, The Bachelorette, they have pulled the entire season of the series. big deal because there's a lot of money going behind it. So what we learned about was the star of The Bachelorette, the current Bachelorette that was supposed to be featured for this season, Taylor Frankie Paul, engulfed in a domestic assault investigation, which put off the rails the season 22 premiere of Sunday's Bachelorette. And ABC has not said whether the season will ever see the light of day. Deadline.com says that Disney yanked the first episode off its press screening site around Monday, Thursday. The internal decision was to pause this season's rollout. Now, The Bachelorette's already been going through a lot of issues right now because it has been like a little while since they brought it back. It was not here last season. 2 top showrunners were let go because of their part in a toxic workplace. And they were looking to go and bring the show back cleaned up and have Taylor, who was featured on Hulu's The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. And also being said is that season 5 of The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives has been paused due to a domestic assault investigation right here with Paul and Dakota Mortensen. So there's a video that TMZ first released that shows Paul in 2023 trying to physically attack Mortensen and throwing several metal bar stools at him while a child is present. And it was an incident that led Paul to plead guilty to aggravated assault. And there's an open domestic assault investigation involving the pair with allegations made in both directions. Paul also alleged wrongdoing in Mortensen's part in the 2023 case. Yeah, she's toxic as hell. And maybe that might work for television, but you know what? In these days where we were a little more loose, like 20 years ago, might have gotten around all this. But now, no. In a very hypersensitive social media environment, impossible to put this show out there now. But my guess is I think they'll still find a way to go and put it out there in the first place. I don't know how they'll do it, but the problem is that that's all the money that's being spent on it. When it comes down to the show, ABC says they could be out tens of millions of dollars if they can't find a way to salvage the show. According to sources familiar with the show, this is going to Variety.com, licensing fees to Warner Brothers Unscripted Television, marketing dollars, and other loss of revenue. ABC abruptly pulled the show as of today, as I record. And by the way, the show also is distributed out to City TV in Canada, so they're not showing if it's going to wind up on TV somewhere. What's going to be airing instead is a simulcast of American Idol. They're going to just rerun it. So right now, Warner Brothers executives, according to insiders, are taking a wait-and-see approach to see what's happening, staying in contact with ABC. But they say they were surprised by the sudden turn of events. Warner Brothers had concerns with casting Paul, given her well-known history of domestic violence. After all, it's documented at the very start of The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. So the show has not been back since summer 2024, and now, who knows if it comes back again. But are we kind of sad to see The Bachelorette going away after 22 seasons? I don't know. But this is how far they have to go to get that show to be interesting. They have to find somebody that is obviously got some problems. And to let this toxic woman on this program to find dates or find marriage is crazy. But it's the kind of salaciousness that people expect. But part of the thing comes back to the podcasting discussion I want to bring out in the first place. Because you ask yourself, all right, well, there's a point where how far do you have to go to try to keep people tuned into watching television or listening to a podcast for that matter? Making it very tough. So let's go and talk about why this is all happening in the first place. The overall sense of podcasting right now. Podcasting's $1 billion growth problem. This was reported by LA Times. This was a couple weeks ago. I didn't get a chance to go and write about this, but here we go. Audio agency Oxford Road announced discovering a looming crisis in podcast advertising measurement, costing the podcast industry $1 billion in annual spend. But now here's what's going on. So advertisers have $1 billion ready to go and spend on podcasting as of many other fast-growing media formats, but the brands have conditions. And so what they did was Oxford Road, they did a survey looking at the people writing the biggest checks in audio. Leaders of the 6 of the top 10 podcast advertisers in the U.S., controlling roughly 15% of total U.S. podcast spend. And these brand decision makers were sharing insights about what's working, what's not, what needs to change for podcasting to realize this next stage of growth. And remember, there's a reason why a lot of podcasters are going out to other outlets, because the advertising isn't enough to make ends meet. Part of it is some of them have gone to video to try to get this on YouTube because they absolutely need that platform to get noticed. So you do what you can on there. I get it. I mean, for myself, I just do a slate and I put up the shows just like it would be on audio because I'm not worrying about putting any extra work into this. I mean, I've done green screens before, don't care. But for people that actually put out full sets, get 3 cameras in here, and they start doing a whole thing just to do talking heads, the kind of money they're putting down on it is kind of crazy. And it's not even so much the cameras or the setup, it's the control room. It's what you have to go and do to stream out and to put the show and put it together and produce it. The production and post-production, got to be quite a bit of money. So they put out a study that what brands want in 2025, how audio publishers and platforms can win over advertisers. We'll get into that story in a little bit, but let's go more into LA Times, what they talk about, and some of the findings they found out. The number one barrier to growth is measurement. 50% of respondents cited limitations in performance data as the main constraint on spend. 76% of brands would increase their podcast investment if attribution to YouTube podcasts matched that available for audio. Yes. And I understand where they're coming from. With an RSS feed being picked up by so many different outlets, there is not one podcast host out there that has been able to go and give a proper measurement. Now, we might have measurements out there that are IAB certified, for advertising agencies out there that they'll satisfy what they need. So they can determine cost per measurement, cost per click, right? Just like for websites. But they don't have an accurate count. Yes, YouTube does give accurate analytics. And if we were just depending on one platform, we have Spotify that does a pretty good job on stats, but Apple Podcasts does not. I mean, for Spotify, I get a pretty good gauge of my audience. It's there for some shows more than others, but at least I get good information on demographics. The per episode that they give me right there is good. Like there's some basic stats that Spotify for creators gives. That's pretty good. Apple Podcasts, not really. It's very limited on what they give you. So I have to go through an amalgamation to figure out what there is. And then I have Spreaker, which posts my content. Thank you, Spreaker. But even they only have so much availability of measurement on there as well. And all these different outlets have no way of determining where your podcast is being picked up. So if you have it on GeoSavant, which is the big platform I think it's for India and Asia, that might be, but you don't know, and you're not really able to get a good gauge of it because no podcast host has that. Neither do they have anything for individuals for Amazon Music. And if you try to go and put a formula together to try to use what these proprietary outlets are getting, I still don't think they're getting the full amount of what there is. You can go through all the podcast hosts you want. Libsyn, Red Circle, Acast, pick your poison. They're all going to give you just some kind of basic stuff. Even, RIP Todd Cochran, when he put out Blueberry and Raw Voice, even they, as a service, don't have enough to really put out there. I mean, because I think, you can have that or Chartable, and you could try to put a code in there to get a gauge of what you got going in terms of your podcast. But I don't think that's enough either. It's hard to get the engagement because you also can't get YouTube. You can't get the API-friendly codes to interject into one system. It's just not possible. If you want to try to go ahead and aggregate all that and put into an AI platform and have it just churn it out, you can do that, but it's a lot of extra work. And I think brands might not even really appreciate that. When I look at Spreaker and what iHeartRadio provides in terms of their ad placement, iHeartRadio just does a pretty good job of their ad placement. So they get local ads in there and they can just find a way to target. And some of the others can do their things and find a way. But really, it's just like hyper local ads they can put in there and find a way to use. Meanwhile, there's a reason why YouTube has so many ads. And they're not short of any kind of inventory. They can put out there as much as they want. But the brands, they're happy to go on to YouTube and maybe some other social media outlets because of the algorithms that those hold, and they can find a better measurement. So with nearly a quarter of advertisers willing to grow their spend by 50% or more, that's $1 billion in additional spend that would be unlocked with standardized video attribution. Now, part of it is too, we are seeing some things where other platforms are trying to go and interject video. Spotify's been doing it for years. Apple Podcasts finally catching up after that. Of course, anything that's iPhone or iOS related, the features that are on Android, they always come up later on iPhones. That's just the way it is. Now, into the story here. Other insights add in the report of what brands want. Brands remain skeptical of AI host reads, signaling the need for stronger disclosure and industry standards to protect trust. Yeah, I mean, I understand the fact that with AI, look, I have the ad that I just put out there for King of Podcast Productions. And yes, I have a female voice that I used to create the voice for it. So I have a nice little ad read. But at the end of the day, I had to put myself in there just to kind of a little bit of trust. It's me. You know, it's coming from me. Programmatic expansion is accelerating, with it set to increase significantly in the next year or so. And respondents are increasingly concerned about rising clutter, that there are more tools needed to help publishers optimize and protect ad effectiveness. And reaching consensus on the definition of a podcast remains crucial. So solving budget, management, attribution, confusion across audio, video, influencer, and YouTube teams. Yeah, the definition of a podcast itself is now very wide ranging. It's not all the same anymore. Some people just call something a podcast when it's not. And I'm starting to identify it more and more because as we see more video-based content, those are talk shows. That's television. Just because it's not on being pushed out through a UHF or VHF band or not being pushed through a cable service, because you can stream it, it's television. You can still put it on a television. You can cast it to a television set, to a smart TV. You absolutely can do that. They also say that brand safety remains a top concern in the face of political extremism, violence, and misinformation, especially with reliable tools still lacking post GARM. What is post GARM? I don't know what that is. LA Times, can you please not do that so I can understand what you're talking about here? The Global Alliance for Responsible Media. Okay, thank you very much. I have to go do my own production. This is my show here, okay? Nobody else is producing this for me. I'm doing it on myself, right? If I'm able to go and do this all by myself, imagine what I could do for you. I'm not plugging anymore. I'm just saying. Dan Granger, CEO of Oxford Road, says that the next phase for growth of podcasts and audio won't be defined by content or distribution alone, but by trust, transparency, and accountability in how impressions and the results are measured. We need leading platforms to move quickly on behalf of stakeholders across this country, in the industry rather. Creators, networks, and brands are standing by. Now, podcasting by the numbers overall, Riverside is reporting that Riverside was the video platform that's out there, that more than 584 million people listen to podcasts in 2025, with that number growing to 619 million viewers by 2026. 34% of Americans listen to an average of 8.3 podcast episodes per week, and 83% spend more than 9 hours listening weekly. The audience and the retention is important for all those advertisers out there. They know that a lot of people are going to this point right now. More than half of the shows are now posting full video versions on YouTube, And the market is projected to be worth $17.59 billion by 2030. So the money's there. But now you have folks out there independently owned and operated, not under any kind of network or FCC regulation. They're going to push as far as they can. And that's the bigger problem. Other than lawsuits that might go ahead and handle libel and slander, what do you do with some content that's out there that is going so far? Okay? I don't want to go and delve so much into politics, but I have to say it like this as a broader term. Politics, and this can be conservative or liberal. Let's not tag anything at all. And it can also be independent. We have people across all different spectrums of the political biases that are engaged in clickbaiting. They're all out there to try to make a buck. Conspiracy theories, misinformation. And if you want to take it with a grain of salt and think that some of it might be true, some of it doesn't, or it just feels good because it's going after somebody that you don't like or somebody that you do like, the problem is that it's still, no one's regulating it. No one's controlling what's being said. It's one thing for that, but like if they get a big audience and they can sway people culturally or sociologically, there's something wrong there. And I would be concerned about that. So I wrote up a little bit of information to try to make my point here about all this. And I'm calling it the tabloid turn because podcasting is evolving into sensational content for monetization, and it's paralleling what we've already seen before. And the reason is because there are some people that realize, look at what you could do back in the day. And every kind of program that's out there is being mimicked or parroted right now today. For all the political talk shows that are out there, we already had Wally George in the hot seat. We already had Joe Pine. We already had Morton Downey Jr. What are you going to do now? Again, Morton Downey Jr. had to go to the point where, the swastika on the face, trying to keep his show avid and alive. Being Al Sharpton being pushed off the chair by Ray Ennis and the KKK and all that other stuff, and Geraldo doing the same thing. And, they'll never get past the fact that he was like complimentary to the daughter of the Satanic Church, Anton LaVey, saying to Xena, I know you're the devil, but you're a beautiful woman. And the crowd is cheering. I couldn't believe it. But that was the kind of stuff we went through. And Geraldo's still alive, and he can still talk about this. Remember, the same man that also opened Al Capone's vault. That was Epstein. Now, we can make fun of that. We can poke fun at that kind of thing, okay? We can poke fun at programming that's out there that could be very Playboy friendly. That could be very, naughty and dirty and whatever. But everybody's now in podcasting trying to go and push the narrative. So people were getting into podcasting and just getting out there to go and talk. But now we're getting those out there on the fringe, trying to go and push to do something more. So we might have had niche, often educational or storytelling driven mediums like podcasting, but intimate, low barrier conversations, investigative narratives. Now we're getting sensationalism, personal drama, scandal, emotional confrontation. That is the embodiment of traditional tabloid medium. Tabloids, we think William Randolph Hearst, going back in the 1900s, yellow journalism, sensationalism, National Enquirer, Weekly World News, the supermarket tabloids, hard copy, A Current Affair, Inside Edition, all those type of tabloid type shows, TMZ in the current day. They all go with that. But they also have a little bit of levity and a little bit of fun and a little bit of campiness to themselves. But some of the folks that are doing this content now are taking themselves way too seriously because there are no guardrails. Nothing is holding them back for what they can do. Nothing is going to hold them back for what they could say and how they can sway a big audience to do something that is not in the best interest. Not in the public interest anyway. So the pattern mirrors the trajectory of print tabloid magazines, the TV news magazines, daytime talk shows, and daytime talk shows. We can talk about Charles Perez, Jenny Jones getting people killed, Sally Jesse Raphael, Maury Povich, Jerry Springer, Richard Bay, There's a load of them, okay? Howard Stern had a show on Channel 9. Let's remember, all these shows were on, and it was all salacious. And I'm not even counting some of the other shows we had where, or something that has come out of a Girls Gone Wild commercial, like those kind of things, okay? That was all back in the 90s, 2000s. I didn't know we were going to get back to this once again. Technological accessibility and audience competition incentivize a pivot to infotainment, prioritizing drama over detachment, fostering monetization through heightened listener and viewer stickiness. You have to admit, there are certain people out there that are willing to go ahead and go as far as they can go when they're not going to get called out. There might be people on social media that will be calling out bullshit that's going on with what people are saying. Because people will go ahead and make unsubstantiated claims now so often. People will go ahead and give their takes on certain things with no knowledge whatsoever. With no possibility of explaining, well, here's what's going on here. And, any kind of context. We are in a society right now where journalism is so dead, it's buried. It's a bloodied horse. I struggle so much every day now trying to find news and information. I don't like the idea that I have to go and keep looking for it. I mean, it's one thing to go and find information and look for it around, but to go look for something that gives me accurate information, or at least an opinion that is well educated and thought out, that's hard. And what's funny is I'm having to find it from the older guard, the people that have been in television and traditional media beforehand, that have moved into podcasting. Those people I have to go ahead and actually listen to or engage with because they're actually giving me something. The bottom line is we have no place, not one place, that honestly just gives us news without a narrative. News that just is delivering what it is. Here's what you need to know. I know there's no money in it. That's why they're doing it. There's no money in a C-SPAN. But the truth is, I wish a C-SPAN could actually just give me, okay, here's all these different meetings and stuff that you have. But then you know what? I get times where I get the news delivered to me. And they're just giving me the news. NPR, I wish they would, NPR and PBS, I wish they would just give me information. Is there anyone that doesn't think there's a risk or gamble that's worth it to go ahead and just get into the information business? Not to try to make a buck on trying to go and give some information you think that's going to be good, or trying to create some kind of narrative or some kind of story that's going to go and sell, get clicks, get subscriptions, whatever. How about just giving the information as it is? Even AI is not even giving me that yet. Maybe at some point we'll get AI that's going to have to be the way we get information the way I want it to be once again. I can't get it from local news because local news can't make the kind of money they did before. They have to be much more on current affairs, consumer action. They have to go that route to try to keep people watching. Because they just can't go there and give us, okay, here's this murder, here's this rape, here's this crime, here's this story, and give it to me in 30 minutes, nice and snap. The newspapers don't have the money to do that anymore. I mean, it was nice to go and find some place where you can get about 75-80% of all your news. And then you have other places to go. Okay, here's some magazines. Here's some other newspapers. Here's, some books. It's so hard right now. So tabloid magazines was the first thing. But of course, when you go through this, we're enjoying the levity, the fun, the entertainment of it. You're talking about publications that did not take themselves seriously. National Enquirer, ramping up celebrity and scandal coverage, which was great at the time. I used to enjoy how you go and get those kind of stories. And you know what? I think in some cases, the Enquirer, that's why TMZ is doing so well, but TMZ took the National Enquirer out of business. And you know what? At least with National Enquirer, if they had stories they put out there where it was wrong, they'd get sued for it regularly. And that's fine. And they did all the time. But you know what? There were times they'd win lawsuits because they were correct. They put out a story that nobody could believe, but it was true. And they never get credit for that either, but they should. Then there was People Magazine, 1974, also exemplified the term. Scandal sheets existed, but now mainstream a focus on private lives, celebrity affairs, family disputes, health shocks, among the most famous of famous people. But now we're getting tabloid gossip shit on people we should care less about. I don't want to hear about Drewski or iShow Speed or Kai Cenat or Taylor Marie Paul or all these other people that are, influencers or whatever. Like, oh, the latest thing with Charlie D'Amelio. It doesn't sound interesting anymore. There's a reason why these shows that used to be on also, Entertainment Tonight, Extra, Access Hollywood, getting canceled after 30 years. Mario Lopez, I'm sure, will find someplace else to go. All those shows been around forever. And now we're at the point where, okay, they're gone. And what's next? But the thing was, the newsstand was the information medium. So newsstand sales, advertising tying to mass appeal, and advertisers would find titles that delivered reliable eyeballs through escapism and shock rather than dry analysis. Because remember, for all these people that are doing out misinformation or doing conspiracy theories or whatever they're doing, they're all finding advertisers. And they're willing to go and gamble because they see the listenership, the viewership of a show on YouTube. They see the numbers they're getting on there. And if those numbers continue to be consistent, they're going to try to do what they can for it. And if they can't get the advertisers, they're trying to get the money they can off the YouTube accounts to get as much monetization as possible. And also try to paywall stuff as well, if they can, until somebody pirates it and puts it out on Reddit or Discord or whatever. 1980s, you start getting more broader celebrity-focused titles, blending gossip with aspirational lifestyle content. And newsstand racks would prioritize personality journalism over institutional reporting. Yeah, all goes along. And so we have shows that would be blanketing everything that was all salacious and crazy and wild. Current Affair, Hard Copy, Inside Edition. Inside Edition still on the air today. Crime stories, celebrity scandals, interpersonal conflicts, and cliffhanger narration. The thing is now is that when you watch a Current Affair, Hard Copy, and Inside Edition, just go look at old episodes on YouTube. Your network news, your cable news, the news is delivered exactly like that. And don't tell me it's not. It's totally done that way. They don't care. Cable, 24-hour news cycle, competition for ratings, same thing. Sensationalistic segments, boosting viewership during sweep periods. Look, right now, do you like the fact we got a war in Iran? Well, I mean, no matter what, we're going to hear about it all the time. What about the Nancy Guthrie story? She never got found. But how many weeks did we get that story? And Nancy Grace and all these other people going around giving us, we don't know anything, but we're still searching. We're trying to go and find out stuff. Nancy Guthrie, poor thing, never found her. But they made it a big deal because it's Savannah Guthrie's mom. And we didn't learn anything from like 3 weeks of that stupid story. I'm not saying about Nancy Guthrie. I'm just saying the story was stupid. The way it was reported and commented on and held over our heads for weeks. They went wall to wall on it. Cable news, your local, all these different news outlets all went on with it. And then we get reality-based programming. Listen, it was nice to go and have the early days of cops and cheaters. Those shows were fun, and you could have fun with them, right? There was a fun aspect to them. They were portrayed in a way that way. Same way I looked at Gong Show or Love Connection or Dating Game. It's like all this kind of shows, tongue-in-cheek, but they kind of poke fun at themselves. They had fun with themselves. We don't have that now. I mean, there's supposed to be an entertainment value to what we have on all these different outlets. But without it being on a television medium or a cable medium, somewhere it can be regulated by the FCC or somebody, where there's some kind of company behind it making sure that these shows don't go off the rails. Some of the people that are out there now, especially in political commentary, because they don't have any producers or anybody else in their staff to control what content they're doing now, they're just able to go wherever they want. They have public notoriety. They've gotten themselves online. They're on a social media. They're on YouTube or wherever they are. And now they found a way to go and just continue to do their thing. But now they can go as far off the rails as they want. And nobody can stop it. And there's to a point of that. Daytime talk shows, starting off with Phil Donahue, right? And then you move on into Oprah and other shows like that. And you had onstage revelations, family conflicts, paternity surprises, heated confrontations, surprise guests, lie detector tests, audience participation, raw emotion, unpredictability, and the ratings spike when episodes deliver spectacle. Look, I was there, 1998, at the peak of Jerry Springer, where I went to Channel 25, my ABC affiliate here, WPBF in West Palm Beach, and to think that the 5 o'clock news would follow Jerry Springer at 4 o'clock. So 4 o'clock, we're watching Jerry Springer, and we're seeing fights every day on that show. And Steve and the folks out there having to go ahead and get out there and just fight away. And then we get to the 5 o'clock news. And of course, the 5 o'clock news, because of the Jerry Springer audience, they had to go and do something to try to work on it. Channel 5, WPTV, had Oprah at 4 o'clock, a different counterpart. And of course, one of the biggest shows there was, but also perennially number one show at the time slot. And then Jerry Springer comes in for a couple of years, and they take over number one. It was a big deal back then. The fact that Jerry Springer show could claim 20% of the audience in my market, West Palm Beach, leading up to the news. And some of that will retain to the 5 o'clock news. And they would find stories that would fit well to lead people into that news broadcast. The tabloidization of TV, personal trauma, scandal supplanting, measured discussion, all to retain viewers in an increasingly fragmented media landscape. So in the politics end, right? I'll take this example here. And again, I stay apolitical. But we remember how people felt when we had assassinations of JFK, MLK, RFK. And this solemn depression, the depression among people out there with a political cause and just feeling deflated. Well, right now, in the conservative end of politics, ever since the assassination of Charlie Kirk, there has been a change among conservative voices that have gone into a real end. Okay, let's take Candace Owens, for example. Personally, going after the widow of the deceased. Whether you like her or you don't, but they're putting out a lot of stories out there about this young lady and what she's going through. I mean, does she deserve to have to go through all that? I don't know. But the thing is, there's nobody stopping what's being said here. I mean, it's one thing about, I'm not caring if it's true or not in terms of what the content's supposed to be. But if there's something wrong here, and that personally, Erica Kirk's being attacked here in all different areas, and then she can't defend herself, or she can't sue enough people to go ahead and stop what's happening, what is she supposed to do about it? Because this is out on social media. This is on the internet. There's nothing you can do. There's no regulations about it. When that kind of content can just go out there, I mean, it's one thing if the advertisers were pulling off of these programs. That was always the way you kind of stopped the show from where they were going. But see, we're not behooving the advertisers anymore. The advertisers are not the drawing power of these audiences. If they can find a subscription model, if they can find enough listeners to stick around and take in what they're talking about on a regular basis, they will. And they're able to get away with it. So podcasting, first of all, it was getting us back almost like the local radio, a feel, small town, very intimate kind of feel to it. Low cost, substantive. And then you had those that would do long form storytelling, your serials of the world that got really big. That made a big difference. And that really got people paying attention to podcasting. And of course, remember, I started back in 2005. We were audio archiving. And we were streaming audio, but it wasn't the in thing, but there were people starting to get into it. And at various niches that started getting pretty big. Namely professional wrestling, which is the first program I did and continue to do today. Which by the way, in 2 weeks, I'm going to be celebrating the 1000th episode of. I'm pretty happy about that. So podcasting, with the help of Serial, would show that podcasting demonstrated massive audience potential and a boom providing narrative depth that could compete with traditional media. And it has. Then you got Spotify, Apple, YouTube pouring billions of dollars into exclusive deals, video integration. We've talked about it all on this program. And many podcasts into visual talk show experiences. On living room screens, you can go and watch it right now. And look, there are some shows that are doing stuff right now, and it kind of works. You know, I've seen some people right now looking at, if you want to bring back an old talk show set, like something you would see out of Dick Cavett, bring it back. That's okay. You don't necessarily have to have the Howard Stern, Joe Rogan look, where you have to have a microphone in front of you. You can have a lavalier. You can have a couple of chairs swiveling around, and you're just talking. But the content's got to be good too. So then you started getting host-read ads, dynamic insertions, sponsorships, premium subscriptions, live tours, merchandise, generating billions of dollars in the U.S. alone. Algorithms rewarding episodes that maximize completion rates and shares, favoring titles promising explosive revelations, shocking confessions, or unfiltered interpersonal drama. Into politics, you always get all these stories that are out there. Of course, you're using salacious tabloidistic terms. Cremates, destroys, devastates. And it's like, okay, some political commentary or some clip that somebody said something, blows up. All these kind of things. Just trying to create some kind of shock and awe type of thing when there's nothing really there. So back in the day, I mean, look, tabloid magazines might be done and gone, but what they've been replaced with right now are thumbnails for podcasts and videos, and social media for that matter. Thumbnails. Tell me I'm wrong. TV news magazines, talk shows chasing teases with ratings with teases. You won't believe what happens next. Well, that's what the reels are now when you get clips up on Instagram or YouTube or TikTok. Those are all teases. Podcast now with the episode titles. Those are headlines that would try to catch attention. I'm notoriously guilty of that, but that's okay. But I know what my audience is. And I come from a time of media where I can understand the new media, but also respect of what happened to me. I know what history does, so I'm not repeating it. I always do with social media and the internet, you have to be careful because you're instantly getting a public persona. And that what you do out here, there are repercussions to anything you put out there if you get famous. If you get anybody listening to you or watching you, you have to be clear about what you're doing. So now revenue correlates with emotional retention, shock, empathy, outrage. And it's all feigned, by the way. How much do you see right now? Look, I watch on X. For instance, if I'm looking for something out there, okay, it might be something on wrestling, it might be something on politics, it might be something on news. And then how many times do I see something where on my X feed, if I decide to go and just flip through, I get people fighting, I get all this outrageous stuff. And like, I can tell on X, I go on there for about 5-10 minutes looking through stuff. I cannot imagine people that are on there and they're getting outraged. They are getting pissed off. Because everything that's on there is supposed to gaslight you. You're seeing propaganda. You're seeing stories that are like ridiculousness. And you're like, what are you doing? What is this all about? Why are we seeing all this? How can people be so stupid? Now, the other thing, too, is that we used to have the gossip magazines. We used to have celebrities that could be talked about and pinned up, but we don't have those kind of celebrities anymore. The level of celebrities that people really cared about, there's some. I mean, you might get it, maybe some musicians out there or certain TV stars or certain influencers, but do the people really care? Not at the level that you used to. Not anymore. So tabloid television in the 80s would be mixed crime, celebrity exposés. 90s would be private disputes into public spectacle. But now podcasts are blending true crime reconstructions, pop culture gossip, hot seat interviews, revealing intimate details. By the way, what would make for great television or great podcasting is if you have these differing opinions appearing on other shows. Like, it's interesting. I was listening to a few people that talk about the fact that when you have certain shows out there that are hosting interviews, I am of the opinion I hate softball interviews. I also am not going to go confrontational with somebody, but I think I've done some good examples in my time, especially on Cannabis Radio and especially on this program, where, I don't softball anybody. I like to give good questions and I like to get information that I want out of the interview. I want to get some real takes. So getting Dr. Judy Mikovits and getting the chance to talk to her about pandemic, or talking to Tommy Chong, or talking to Damian Marley, or any of the folks that I've talked on this podcast about, or anybody on Podcasters Row. Like, my thing is, I'm not going to just let them come in here and just pussyfoot around. And especially if you have somebody that's very polarizing, very controversial in their sayings, I'm not telling you to have to go and give them gotcha questions, but you need to go and confront them on what's being talked about. Make sure you get answers to the questions that everybody's asking about. And not ask the same questions everybody else asks either, just so they can give a canned answer. Because right now, we don't have enough. For politics, I would prefer more debate. I don't want to hear one echo chamber talking to their echo chamber of listeners, and the same thing goes. No, I want these people on all these different shows. So if you don't like Nick Fuentes or Candace Owens or, Megyn Kelly or Mark Levin or whoever else, or Bill Maher or Don Lemon or Jen Psaki or, pick your names, or Jon Stewart or Pod Saves America. I want all these people on different programs. One of the shows that I really do like that I catch pretty regularly, it's who Joe Rogan calls the cat wrangler, Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan Uncensored. Bill Maher is a good example too with Real Time. Those are two shows. They're bringing on people with differing views. And I'm not caring about, that the host gets owned by them. No. But ask questions, get dialogue out there. Let's get something going on. And let's really talk here. Bill Maher with Politically Incorrect, same thing. I enjoyed those kind of programs because it was good to get those kind of people on. And we used to have shows like that all the time. Like Morton Downey, the fact he would go ahead and have, okay, Ron Paul, you don't like him, but we're going to talk to him. Alan Dershowitz, let's talk to him. Al Sharpton, let's talk to him. Different opinions, but at least we'd have those kind of people on. And I can enjoy that. I can enjoy when we get different opinions out there and we have people on. Because the one thing I don't like is to hear people that have their opinions and they can't be called out on it, or at least be confronted about it, and let them defend themselves. And those people that are out there that are going to give their views, they should be allowed to go on other shows. So when I see some people finally get a chance to be featured on certain interviews, of course they're going to cherry pick who they want to be on. That's going to give them a pussyfoot interview. It's not going to ask anything important or very poignant. And then they come off softball and then they get criticized for it. And they should, rightfully so. So you're going to have controversial figures on, and you're not going to ask them. People are already going to be there for the interview. And so all you're getting are the clips because you got them on, but you're doing nothing with it. So you're obviously saying you're there for the clicks, because then why am I going to watch your show? Why am I going to listen to your podcast if you might have brought them on and you're going to get that one appearance they're going to come on, and you're going to find out you didn't ask them anything. You didn't do anything to push the needle or to get something out of them where you can learn. And I'm not talking about personal attacks. I'm talking about taking the information they have, what they have said, confront them about it. Some of my best questions I ever ask are when I get to go ahead and quote somebody as what they said and take their actual quote in context. I don't take just a small quote, full context, and then let them expand on it. And when I get something out of an answer, I'm not going to just run on, because within the time limit of the parameter of the show that I have, I'm going to make sure I get everything I want to ask about it. I'm going to make sure everything I get to know. Look, even one of my favorite interviews I had was last year with Michael Harrison at Talkers Magazine. And, that interview, I learned a lot out of it. And I had my opinions on radio when it comes, and also with podcasting, and I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed having that conversation. And I could feel it was getting a little bit contentious. That's okay. Because at the end of the day, we both came out of it really well, and I thought it was very amicable, and I enjoyed it. And I would be happy to have Michael on back once again. So we don't have the normal places that people go to because of the internet. Right now we have fragmentation, so people don't go to cable like they used to anymore. Because remember, cable was good because we had all the different channels and so many different places to go to watch content. But now people are fragmenting off to other places. But at least cable, you still had the rules and regulations. You still had some parameters in there because you had whatever channels they were on as part of a lineup of other shows, and they were advertiser driven. And if those advertisers were going by the wayside, that means something's wrong with the show. And that show might lose their spot. Podcasts today, unlike tabloid magazine stories of hidden affairs or TV segments exposing family secrets, podcasts now do extended audio confessions, dramatic cultural deep dives with listener communities debating the theories in real time, extending the entertainment engagement loop. Because remember, the other thing too is that people don't want to listen to full context. Well, they can just get a little piecemeal of what they get off of X or TikTok or Instagram. Yeah, they don't want to listen to the whole show, which is also a point of contention I have of podcasters, that you're willing to go ahead and live off what you do in your content just on the clips. Because you know the clips are going to get you clicks. But your content itself isn't good enough to go and get anything more than even a fragment of the audience. I'd prefer people listen to the whole podcast I do every week. 30, 60 minutes, whatever I do here. I want people to listen to the full thing. I have to do the clips because I have no choice. Because everybody else is doing it. If you want to get your shelf notice, you want to get somebody to go ahead and give you take a glimpse or take a listen to you at least for 60 seconds, 90 seconds of their time to make them go and come on to listen to your show more regularly, you do it. When I do certain shows that are on various musical artists or other pop culture references that are important, yes, I'm trying to bring in an audience, but you know what? They might catch from the gateway of the clips I put out there, but for the most part, I'm hoping that the episodes that I do and the content I do, I'm actually trying to bring in an audience and have people listen in. I try to anyway. There are shifts that are occurring without overt partisanship in the underlying mechanics. Universal market responses to competition. Pioneers start with higher-minded ambitions, yet scale demands broader appeal. Then you come up with a media ecosystem richer in accessibility and emotional connection, but challenged by questions of depth and responsibility. Yes, it just devolves. So podcasting is devolving now. But only the best will survive and do well. So for me, I'm going to stick to my guns here. I'm not going to be held over by an algorithm or clicks or monetization to do this program. Because when I first started this series, I just wanted to be able to have a little bit of money to be able to go and afford to do it. Now anybody can do it, and that's great. But for me, it's the passion of the podcasting. So for some of my fellow podcast folks out there, they're driven by money. They're doing it as a means to an end. That's fine if you're doing that. Just be honest with people out there about it. Be honest about it. And also be honest about being confronted and allowing yourself to be debated on your views and your opinions. For me, I love to do that. Some of my best interviews have been when I've had to question some of my thoughts and beliefs in the process of the interviews that I've done. When I've had various radio people on, and I get information from some of these folks that were former radio people, and I learn a lot from them. And I realize, damn, maybe some of the things that I thought about when it came to the industry, maybe I'm a little bit wrong about. And that's okay. But I learned from it. Some of the interviews I did late last year that I learned. When I think about Joe Pardavia that I talked to from WPLJ formerly, and then other places that he worked at. When I take Neil Veglio or Carell or Ralph Sutton from Gas Digital Network, those that have made the transition from radio to podcasting, I learned so much from them. And they made me question myself and my opinions. And I'm humble enough to allow myself to get to that point. I think it's very important about that. And all my conversation tonight hinders on the fact that South by Southwest is featuring the podcast industry this weekend in Austin. So this weekend we have podcast movement that is making their way into South by Southwest. Their spring conference, Evolutions, is directly into the South by Southwest experience. They're signaling just how far podcasting has moved from niche hobby to serious media infrastructure. And it'll be in Austin, Texas. And here is the real telling truth about this as well. Let me just take this point. Allison Melody, a top podcaster coming to Austin for the event, host of the wellness podcast Food Heals, says that the rise of podcasting isn't just about microphones and downloads. It's about creators building full-scale media businesses. Right. They're trying to build empires. So many folks out there. And for Allison, she says it was early on that she accelerated her show's growth, that the passion gave it purpose, treating it like a business gave it scale. And here's my case in point about this too. So independent media with direct audience power. And this is the part where advertisers don't have the kind of leverage they once had, which is why some advertisers, and that $1 billion doesn't come this way either. Let's make that point clear too. That the advertisers, I think that Oxford Road survey doesn't give this point, but I think that there's something to be said about advertisers not wanting to go and jump into podcasting, not just because of metrics, but because of the content that might be put out there. And there's nobody out there that's trying to go and control the content. Because if they're advertising on a show and then something's being said and there's nobody out there to kind of just regulate or just to produce a show that's not going to, that can push the boundaries but not break them, there's a problem there. So Jennifer Brinney, host of Congressional Dish, says she intentionally structured her show around listener support rather than advertising, and that she said that allowed the show to maintain editorial independence while building a sustainable business model powered directly by its audience. So these are the kind of ideas that we have out there now, more than anything else. A couple other stories I want to bring up before we wrap things up. Netflix and their point of contention where they're doing split seasons now. They may have peaked, but there have been long gaps between seasons that may be here to stay on some series because, of course, absence makes the heart grow fonder. They don't want to just have a show stick around and then 1 year later they're back. They want to make it stretch out even farther. So they looked at the fact of Stranger Things taking so many years to come back from season 4 to season 5, that they're starting to see that Netflix wants to do that for a lot of their bigger series to get fresh episodes to fans faster. Production delays related to the pandemic and Hollywood strikes trending in 2023 and 2024 used to get quick turnarounds of shows. Now, not so much anymore. So in the last few years, Netflix would do that. In 2023, new seasons of The Witcher, The Crown, and a supersized season of Virgin River were all released in 2 batches each. The following year, they did the same with Bridgerton, Emily in Paris, and Outer Banks. In 2026, they're now only doing 1 batch release, which is season 4 of Bridgerton, debuting it in 2 parts. Now, The Witcher and Emily in Paris have been binge drops. The upcoming final season of Outer Banks is expected to go out all at once. Netflix, by the way, does shorten gaps between seasons. They have been stepping up early renewals, keeping drama series like Virgin River, The Night Agent, and also all comedies on a yearly delivery. And some of their shows they will have seasons that will stretch out between 2 years. But according to what they're saying here, a Netflix representative says that there's something in terms of strategically and just intentionally thinking about some people who don't want the yearly cadence. Like absence makes the heart grow fonder in terms of some of our event series and such. And it really has to spring from what that will of vision and creativity for the creator. Because they think based on who there is, that people like the fact that Stranger Things took so long to get to where it was. And who knows? I mean, I think there's something to be said about if a show can't get themselves ready to go in a year's time and put out 8, 10, 12 episodes, they're not going to do anything better to probably stretch it out a little bit later. I mean, even with Stranger Things, I don't know if you could have done anything where you take 3 years off, and that's how long it takes for you to bring the show back. And then you're getting these expectations after more than a year. What are you going to make that show do to make it so well? Just saying. One other story I want to bring up. There's the story from Nielsen data that they did a thing where they now have a new big data algorithm kind of thing where they've done their methodology now on how they measure programs. They've made some changes to it. And they've changed the way it estimates the size of U.S. audiences for broadcast and streaming in their monthly gauge reports. So streaming TV over broadcast and cable isn't as complete as it seems. A report from the measurement firm Nielsen is set to suggest. Streaming has accounted for almost 42% of U.S. TV viewing time in February, compared to 47.4% for so-called linear TV, according to unreleased Nielsen data described by people with direct knowledge of the numbers. As a reversal from Nielsen's most recent gauge report, that TV viewing was the other way around. 47% more streaming, 42% linear. So Nielsen made changes to their big data that would cause it where broadcast and cable TV numbers would see a boost in February after it began using a study from the industry's Advertising Research Foundation to inform estimates of the demographic groups in U.S. households and technology they use to watch TV. So in their study, they said that YouTube's estimated share of viewing on TV sets was 11% in the report for the month of February, down from 12.5% in January. And estimates declined for Netflix, for Amazon Prime Video, and for Roku. And Disney Plus, Paramount Plus, and Tubi streamer viewership numbers also saw their numbers drop, according to Nielsen. And that Nielsen reportedly, had been historically undercounting the prevalence of broadcast and cable relative to streaming. That's what their deal is. So I don't know where to go and take all that information, but the fact of the matter is that Nielsen's doing a solid for cable and broadcast television to give them that chance to pick themselves back up. That's what it looks like to me. Anyway, website is kingofpodcasts.com. You can find all my content. Make sure to go and check it every week. And I hope you enjoyed this conversation about podcasting and podcasters out there. Remember, the content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.